spend some time to be able to see what the churches, what God is doing in all of the churches. Pastor Bruce, Gio, and I, we serve with our regional leadership team for East Asia. We've had a chance to visit Japan already. Earlier this year, April. Pastor G and I had a chance to visit Guam and Saipan around March. And this is our South Korea trip. We're believing God to be able to visit Hong Kong and Macau by September, I think. And then Taiwan finally will be able to visit by November. So, quick update coming out of Metro Manila. The Lord has just been prospering the work that's happening there, and I appreciate the question from our sister in relation to what about those churches, right, that close or that that decline. All of us experienced that kind of decline and contraction in the past 3 years because of the pandemic. And in church history, you'd actually see a pattern of contraction. That would be people would be less in the church. There'd be a lot of persecution, and then expansion would immediately happen. One of the very first ones you'd see would actually be in Acts chapter 8. By the end of Acts chapter 8, they got persecuted in Jerusalem. So the church in Jerusalem really lessened. It shrinked. Because it says there, many of the people were scattered all across, except the apostles. So the only ones who stayed in Jerusalem or remained were the apostles, and that's not very many. So you have Acts chapter 5, you'd hear they filled Jerusalem with all their teaching. And then by Acts chapter 8, they'd be persecuted and they'd be scattered. But Acts chapter 9, it would tell us that all who were scattered, they began to preach the gospel everywhere. And that's how the gospel came to Samaria. That's how the gospel came to these other places. And before you know it, in the middle of Acts chapter 9, the Lord would do a work in the life of the persecutor himself. Saul the Pharisee eventually becomes Paul the Apostle. So that's a pattern in church history. There'd be something, maybe a persecution or a tragedy would happen, then the church would contract, but then it's a preparation for immediate expansion after. So we're now in that season again that we're actually expanding. I was asking Pastor Daniel a while ago about, and Danny also. So Pastor Daniel and Danny, there you go. And they were telling me about how we look like before the pandemic, but now God has actually added to us. So we're at that place that we're actually growing as a church here in Every Nation Church Seoul. So the Lord is faithful to be able to do that. In Metro Manila, we have around 19 congregations that are serving, and 5 ongoing church plants. Is that right? Yeah, 5 ongoing church plants. And not only that, but in the rest of the Philippines, we have around 105 provincial churches as well, and I think another 7 ongoing church plants in the provinces. So all in all, around 12 happening this year. And the Lord is, the Lord is expanding the work there as well. Last week, we had a chance to be able to gather together the pastors, all of the pastors in all of those congregations all across the Philippines. This is the first time we've gathered all of the ordained pastors together in one room. Around 360 pastors all together. We were worshiping together, and God was just, also doing a great work in our midst. That's really encouraging. All right, just wanted to be able to mention all of those. Now let's get into our session. We're going to talk about a lifestyle of relational discipleship. Part of what we'd like to talk about in relation to this is the idea of small group discipleship and how God has called you to lead, how God has called you to be able to do small group discipleship, and how God intends to expand the work through small group discipleship. So a quick question: how many of you here you're leading a small group of people? Small discipleship group. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There you go, 7. Okay, so we have 7 people who are here right now. So we have 7 small groups. The rest of us, I'm really happy. I'm really happy that you're involved one way or another, and I'm sure someone is raising you up to be a group leader yourself. Okay, so this is pretty basic. We're going to talk about discipleship all over again. I know you've probably memorized already the 4 E's, right? Engage, establish, equip, and then empower. Now we're going to talk about the power behind the 4 E's, which you already know, the 3 F's. The 3 F's. It's follow, fellowship, and fish. Follow, fellowship, and fish. That's discipleship. How do you do that relationally? How do you do follow, fellowship, and fish relationally? And how can you make it a lifestyle. So, in fact, for those of you who've gone through our discipleship journey, you're probably very familiar with this already. We're just going to go do a rehash, and I'm going to tell a few stories. So I started out when I was in fourth year, when I was in junior high, and I was this thin, okay? Yeah, I was this thin. That'd be me on the right side. That was me, on my first year in Victory U-Belt. That was when I also got to meet Pastor Jonathan. And then a year later, I was now in university. And that's still me, okay, to the right, and a man to the left, left in blue, and a man who looks like he does not have a future. But the Lord is good, okay. A few years later, that was around 1992. We continued with the campus ministry. 8 years later, I was already on staff. In Victory Taft. Again, you see Pastor Jonathan in the middle, and I'd be to his left. So that's us. You probably know some of the other people there. That was when Pastor Ado and Pastor CJ still had hair. So you got two guys there who were pastors and leaders in Victory. And this is Pastor Jonathan's house. I think this particular meeting happened 2014, so almost 10 years ago. And we love to fellowship in their house every Christmas. This one's November. So it's usually his birthday, November. We just be there along with Teresa. They'd serve us the best food. And we'd stay there until 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Every time. And God has that same picture, the picture that you saw, people who had no future, but then God gave us a future, and we're still serving with each other. This is Pastor CJ and us going out with our families, 6 kids all together. Lifelong friendships, coming from those initial days of just, we knew each other, Pastor CJ and I, when we were still, finishing up college. I saw him. He was like a he was like a heartthrob in his school. So that time, and we kid with him until today about it. This was middle of the pandemic. This was 2021, and this time it's a picture with all of our families together. And I realized this, Lord, thank you. Thank you that discipleship is relationship. These men have poured into my life. I'm the recipient. Most of these guys are older than me. The one you see in the middle, that's Pastor Ado. The one you see to the left middle would be, Pastor Richie Lianto. And then the one middle would be Pastor Nixon, his family. They are sponsor. The one to the right upper, would be Pastor Donnie. They're like the sponsors, the principal sponsors in our wedding, Ninong and Ninang in Filipino. They're only 3 years older than I am. But their input in my life has been so great. It's been a journey of discipleship with them. And I appreciate being able to live my life with lifelong friends who've invested in me when I was still very young, and now continue to walk with me and make sure that I treat my family well, I follow God with all of my heart, and I serve with a lot of humility until today. That's discipleship. This was us all together, I think May of last year, when we had a chance. The pandemic was, coming to a conclusion. We had a chance to be able to gather together by the beach this time with all of our families and just celebrating together. The reason why I'm showing all of these pictures is just to say that this is it. The whole idea of discipleship, it's a lifelong journey of relationship with each other, and it is a lifestyle. The people you get to impart the gospel to, they're the same people that God would probably add to your life, so that you could walk with them, and be able to see your families grow. It's a lifestyle of relational discipleship. When Jesus called them, this is in Matthew chapter 4, verse 18. While walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. Of course, obviously. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. Discipleship is a call to follow Jesus. Simple. It's a call to follow Jesus. And the call to follow Jesus has a cost. You cannot follow Jesus haphazardly. You also cannot follow Jesus half-heartedly. You cannot follow Jesus in a compromising way. You cannot follow Jesus without absolute surrender. The cost is that if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself. Take up his cross daily. That means consider yourself dead. For you have been crucified with Christ and you no longer live. And that's the only way to be able to follow Jesus. When one's life is not completely surrendered to Jesus as Lord, there's no following. You're simply attending church. You're simply going through the motions of religion. But a true disciple follows Jesus, has denied himself, taken up his cross, and followed him. It means that my agenda with my life is no longer my dream. Is no longer pursuing my dreams. The agenda of my life is no longer establishing my family and, having a nice house, having multiple cars, sending my children to good schools, and just making sure that my life and my family gets established. That's no longer my goal. My goal is not to advance in this world because I have denied myself. Now, in the process of obeying God, if God adds that to my life, the Lord is the one who establishes my family. The Lord will advance me in my career. The Lord will be the one to give me opportunities along the way. But that's no longer my goal because I follow Jesus. I've denied myself. My life does not amount to anything anymore except only if lived for God. And then I've been crucified with Christ. I take up my cross daily. I consider myself dead. And then finally, I follow Jesus. The only way to follow Jesus properly is we have already died to ourselves in that way. And Jesus has not only called you to follow Him per se, He gives the call to several people all at once. You'd see this. And going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, in the boat with Zebedee, their father, mending their nets, and He called them. So when Jesus calls you to follow Him, He's not asking you to just follow Him alone. He's asking you to follow Him together with the family, with you, with each other. And that's exactly what happened to them. Immediately, it says there, they left their boat and their father and followed Him. So discipleship is a call to follow Jesus and to fellowship with believers. But it is for a purpose. We do not gather in our small groups only to just have fellowship and enjoy each other forever. No, it is for a purpose. It is to preach the gospel of the kingdom. They went throughout Galilee, and Jesus was leading them, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom. So the idea that discipleship is a call to follow Jesus, to fellowship with believers, and then to fish for people. Discipleship is a call to follow Jesus, fellowship with believers, and fish for people. Now, we know that the way to do that, so this would be the 3 F's. This is the power behind the form. The motivation. If you're thinking, how do we grow a discipleship culture? How does discipleship become a lifestyle? In me, in my wife, in my family. How does it become a lifestyle? This is internal. You're following Jesus. You're fellowshipping. These are the principles behind the form. So the power behind discipleship is actually this. This is the culture that people are following Jesus, fellowshipping with believers, and then fishing for others. And this, the discipleship journey, is simply the form. So how do you actually do it? Well, you engage your culture and community. And then you establish believers in biblical foundations. And then you equip believers to minister. And then you empower disciples to make disciples. Now, interestingly, all of that is actually based in Scripture. Really? How? Where? Okay, so, for example, in Matthew 28, it says there, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations." The primary verb in that whole passage or sentence, the primary verb, you'd see that in the Greek. The verb that has the biggest emphasis or the center of the whole sentence is the idea of make disciples. And every other verb that you see there is in support of the primary verb. The other verbs will be go, baptize, teach. There. Those would be the other verbs. And they actually support the whole idea of making disciples. To go is to engage. To baptize them is to establish them in biblical foundations. To teach them is to equip them. And finally, Jesus now empowers us with His presence. He says, hey, you go do this. Engage, establish, equip, and I'll be with you always. That's where the empowerment comes in. I pray that all of us would be able to walk in that way. So, just to recap this part, we're not yet done. This is just the first part. To recap, the principle behind the form, the power behind the discipleship journey would be to follow Jesus, to fellowship with believers, and to fish for people. We want to be able to create or strengthen a discipleship culture. You'd want to be able to go back to those internal things. The idea of following Jesus. The idea of opening up my life and sharing my life with other people. Fellowship. And the heart passion to be able to bring the gospel to others. To fish for people. So how does it become a lifestyle? How does this whole thing become a lifestyle? The idea of a lifestyle is that wherever God would bring you, you'll be bringing this with you. And we see that, we experience that. For example, some of you here, I've got to meet some of our Filipino brothers and sisters. Many of you were probably trained, in one of our churches in Victory in the Philippines. And every time we see them move to another nation, without anyone prompting them, they just begin to make disciples. They just begin to do it. Why? Well, because it's a lifestyle. It's something internal. You want to be able to engage people again. You want to be able to help establish people in their faith again. And usually, a person who is trained, who's, say, for example, a regular church member in the Philippines, would go to another nation, then realize, wow, I could actually get something started here. So that's what you'd like to be able to see, a lifestyle of discipleship. Wherever God would bring you, you'll be living that lifestyle. So how do you do it? Aligned with the 3 F's we mentioned, you'd simply need to start with growing in your relationship with Jesus. This is follow. How do I follow? Grow in your relationship with Jesus. Now, relationship, I like that word. Because relationship means, I'll just need to relate with someone. And then grow in the way we relate with each other. So, for example, I read the Bible, I listen to God, and then I pray. I'm able to relate with Him some. I hear His word, and then I pray, I speak to Him, and we have a two-way communication. We're growing in relationship. And then He tells me something from the word, and then I obey it. We grow even more in relationship. And then I go through an impossibility, and then I trust God. Then I get to understand Him for who He is even more. Quick example, Abraham. Abraham, in Genesis, would offer his son, Isaac, to God. But after that, as God instructed, he obeyed. And as God instructed him, do not kill your son. And then he would see the ram's horns, the ram with his horns, twisted in the thicket. And then he would offer that. That coming out of that experience, he would now say, on the mountain of the Lord, it will be provided. He recognized Jehovah as provider, Jireh. Jehovah Jireh, He is provider. He provided for me. It's a personal experience. Now he encountered one of God's names or one of the facets of who God is. As for you, as you go through your difficulty and then you encounter Him do something for you, say for example, heal you, then He becomes Jehovah Rapha to you, the healer. If you've seen Him bring you through the most difficult circumstances, that His rod and His staff, they comforted you, and that He was able to bring you through the valley of the shadow of death, then you encounter Him as Jehovah Rohi. He's your shepherd. So that personal encounter, that's growing in your relationship with Jesus. So as we continue to read the Bible, we pray, and then we obey, the Lord reveals more of Himself to you, and then your relationship with God grows. That's follow. It says in Acts chapter 2, verse 41, so those who received this word were baptized. They were added that day about 3,000 souls, and they devoted themselves, it says there, to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers, and awe came upon every soul. Just a few observations coming out of that. The idea of a lifestyle of discipleship is first growing in your relationship with Jesus, which means you grow in your knowledge of God. The early disciples, they listened to the apostles' preaching. They got to be with each other. They came to know God even more. And they also came to know the gospel, They came to know the gospel even more. What does that mean? As they received the apostles' teaching, They fellowshiped with each other, and then many more people were added to their number. Knowing the gospel means you will know the fullness of the abundant life that Jesus has given, has paid for you at the cross. Really? Yeah. You're going through financial difficulty. Did you know that's part of the gospel? That's part of what you receive. That's part of what Jesus died for. How do we know that? Well, it says there that He became poor so that you, through His poverty, might become rich. Okay, so all of my needs will be provided. Yes. And then you find this. How will He, if God has given you Jesus, how will He, along with Him, not give you all things? So that's part of the gospel. Knowing the implications of the gospel in your life is part of following or growing in your relationship with Jesus. Do you not have peace? Then go ahead and receive the peace. Jesus purchased that for you too. Do you not have healing? Then receive the healing. That's part of the gospel. Do you not have boldness? Then receive the boldness that comes from God. That's part of the gospel. Is your family not yet saved? Then receive the salvation that will also go to your family. That's part of the gospel. So knowing God and knowing the gospel further, you'll grow in your relationship with Jesus. Quick story. Sorry. The names of the names of this couple, we got to meet them 2017. We were serving in Victory Fort at that time. So you'll have Benny, that's the guy on your left. And you have Meds, the guy on your right, and those would be the two couples. We started meeting with them weekly in the context of a small group. So we grew with them. Part of our conversation many of our conversations were very basic things about reading their Bible, growing in their married life, growing in the way they were raising their kids. And it was a journey of just them getting to know God even more and getting to know the gospel even more. I'm going to come back to this story in a while. That started around 2017. The second part, the idea of having a lifestyle of discipleship is not just growing in your relationship with Jesus, but also growing in your relationship with believers. Growing your relationship with believers. It says there, day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes. Oh, they were together in a temple. They were together in their homes. So that's how you do it. Yes, that's how you grow in your relationship with believers. Just be with them. I was with Pastor Yoram downstairs just now when we sent off Pastor Jonathan and his family. And part of our conversation was, this is life together. This is us going through life together. Mourning with those who mourn, rejoicing with those who rejoice. You're going through birthday parties, attending baby dedications, going to funerals, visiting people in the home, visiting people in the hospital when they're sick. All of that is growing in your relationship with fellow believers. This is us doing life together. You telling people about your history, telling them more about your life that you haven't told anyone else. That's you investing in these relationships, growing in your relationship with believers. That would be shared lives. And not just that, shared mission. There's a reason why God brought us together. Which is why, aside from us sharing life with each other, we're also telling each other, oh, live your life for God. Oh, yeah, I live my life for God too. Oh, help me grow in my relationship with God. Help me grow. I want to be able to have someone I could walk Christianity out with. Shared lives and then shared mission. That couple, 2017, that small group eventually grew. To this was in the middle of the pandemic already. And we were meeting together still with around, the usual number would be around 10 to 12 couples, and depending on the day. But we'd meet every week, encouraging each other, praying for our nation, praying for the people who were going through the pandemic. And this just started out with us following Jesus together. Follow Jesus individually, and then you follow Jesus together. Before you know it, we were sharing our lives. In the middle of the pandemic, they were a huge source of strength to us. I know we were the one leading the group, but were a huge strength to us. Now, that group, we've already had to move. coming from Victory Fort, which is one of our local churches in Manila, we had to move to another church to lead that church. It's called Victory Santa Rosa. So this particular group, we had to, in a sense, conclude it around December of last year. So we had a celebration, Christmas, and so on, and I endorsed them already to other leaders in that church. So as we started new groups in Victory Santa Rosa, now we're leading this group. It's a new one. We've been meeting since August of last year, among around 5 or 6 couples. And we've been growing. They've been inviting other people. Another couple just got added 2 weeks ago. Then eventually attended church 2 Sundays ago. I was surprised. And yay. So a few more couples were added here already. And I journey with them. This is fellowship. We meet weekly. And because we meet weekly, the relationship grows. I get to know what's happening with their lives. And then I spend a little extra time with the intern. That would be the guy I'm raising up to lead. The guy in the middle. The guy in gray in the middle. And then the woman in black. So somewhere to the left. There, they would be the leaders that we are raising up to be able to lead this group. And by next month, we'll be passing on this group to them. And then we'll start a new one again. But to be able to walk with them for 1 year, we've grown friendships. This group has done stuff together. Next week, I think 3 of these couples will be going to Japan just to fellowship together. Only 1 couple was going, and then the other 2 heard about it and then said, let's go together. All right. So they're doing that. 3 months ago, we went on triathlon. Or we were in Japan that time. So I'm glad I was excused. Oh boy, from going to, they did the triathlon, they did the relay. So like one person does the swim, another person does the bike, another person does the run. And that was the fellowship of like 6 couples. They did that together. So there's things that they're meeting apart from us, meeting with them, they're meeting with each other throughout the week. And they're growing in fellowship. I'm happy about that. So at least we'll be able to pass it on to them and the relationship is in place. So we want to grow in our relationship with Jesus, that's follow. We want to grow in our relationship with fellow believers, that's fellowship. And then we want to grow in our relationship with the lost. This is fish. Fish. In the same story of the early church in Acts chapter 2, you'd see there it says, and the Lord added to their number day by day those who are being saved. So part of the life of the church is that more and more people receive the gospel. Growing in your relationship with the lost. How does that happen? You grow in your compassion. Because, I had a chance to talk to Patrick this morning. Is that okay? And I met him at the Paris Baguette. So it just so happened that he was here yesterday, of course, at the prayer meeting. And then he was having breakfast there. And I learned a bit about, he mentioned this, that he's having these connections, these meetings, and the desire is to be able to evangelize at some point. I mean, amazing. When he was doing his master's, he had a chance to be able to meet with students. And at the back of his mind was the goal to be able to evangelize. So he was just going through his life, but part of the goal at the back of his mind was, I hope to be able to bring the gospel to these people. That's compassion. Compassion right there. And of course, witness. Grow in your compassion, and the Lord will be the one to grow your witness. Witness is like the lifestyle that you live is attractive to the people around you. And they see it. You're a witness. You represent Christ well. And I pray that our life would be so excellent such that we would be able to represent Christ well. One final story. I know, not yet final, second to the last. So this couple to the right is these 2 are like neighbors. They're neighbors in a place where we live. This was during the pandemic, and we began reaching out to the neighbor right in front of us. We could not meet face to face, but we began to meet over Zoom. And the couple at the second layer, the second row, they're already Christians. We've met them in church. And we began to work together to be able to win this couple to God. So we met weekly, prayed for them, had a chance, eventually shared the gospel to them, and now they've also been added. In that way. And we're really glad, we're really happy that, yay, Lord, thank you, that even during the pandemic, and just across Zoom, we had a chance to be able to reach out to people. All right, to summarize, a lifestyle of discipleship means continually growing in your relationship with Jesus, with fellow believers, and with the lost. This is not meant to be forced. It's meant to be a lifestyle. It's meant to be part of who you are. Now, I know, I'm a Moksanim. Okay, so it's my job, so to speak. But the day will come, I will no longer be like official pastor of a local church. I will retire. When that day, in the Philippines, it's around 65. But even after that, what would I be doing with my life? I'll be doing this. A lifestyle of discipleship. By the time I get to 80 and 90, if you ask me what I'd be doing by then, I'd still be doing this. My primary role, I'll be attending church as a retired pastor, but I'll be coaching younger pastors, and then I'd be a small group leader. So, what will I be doing when I get to 90? I'd still be doing this. I'd be leading a group. Maybe by that time, I have a small group on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Maybe I'll take a break on Sunday there. So, and then eventually, I have nothing else to do, and I would love to. Maybe I'll do, a small group on Monday morning, Tuesday morning, and so on. In fact, I met a guy during the pandemic. We met this couple. They helped us find a home when we were transferring to Victory Santa Rosa. They have 11 small groups. During the pandemic, 11 small groups. They do 2 a day. And they're just volunteers in church. And I realized, you put me to shame. I can't even do that much. But I've seen it at work. And because it's pandemic, anyone could attend from all. They literally have group members from all over the world. They're like a high school classmate who's now based in Ireland, and then they're from the US, and then from this nation, and they just meet together. So it's actually possible to grow a lifestyle of discipleship. Oh yes. And you'd embrace the idea that I want to grow in my relationship with Jesus. I want to grow in my relationship with fellow believers. I want to open up my life to them. I want to share my life to them. And then I want to be able to grow in my relationship with the lost. Now, I know you're probably, how do I share the gospel to someone? Just grow in your relationship with the lost. And in the process, as you grow in your relationship with the lost, they'll open up their lives, and the Lord will give you at that moment what to tell them when the moment to share the gospel with them will come. It's about growing in your relationship first with them. There. And in the process, the Lord opens up opportunities. One final story. This guy, his name is Mel. He's a guy in pink. Real men wear pink. Okay? So this guy, Mel, and Eva. Eva is a principal of a school, the head of a school, a high school, where we used to serve when we were serving in Imus, Cavite. That's the province where Tristan came from, right? I said, yeah, I know, yeah, Molino. But I mean the province, Cavite, there. So we were doing outreach in the school that Eva, the girl in white in the middle, we were doing outreach in their school. She opened up the school for us. So yay, we were doing campus ministry. But she had trouble in her marriage. This was 2004. Her husband, Mel, had a mistress. And she came to us and asked for counseling. So we sat down with her. In the process, we got to understand what was happening in her life. We began to pray with her. And then I met with Mel separately in a Seattle's best coffee shop in another city. And he was with his mistress when we met. So I sat down, talked to him, and said, I got to know him better. This was my first time to meet him, 2004. And then we were talking, and then at some point I had to say this, Mel, this relationship is not right. Apologies to you, ma'am, but I'll have to say it. This relationship is not right. And if you want God's blessing on your life, if you'd want to be able to live a life under God's favor and blessing, this relationship has to end. I had to tell him that. And you'd have to go back to your family. He did not meet me again after that. Now, I was saying that in that tone. I was very respectful still, but I still had to speak the truth in love to them. So we continued to minister to Eva. Eventually, Mel left the house. So we continued to minister to Eva. By 6 years later, 2010, she had to work abroad, Alabama. So went to the U.S., taught as a math teacher there in order to provide for her three kids, for their three kids. The three kids were already going to college at that time. When Mel heard about that they no longer had a parent with them, I guess there was also something, maybe a situation he already had with his mistress. He went back home. The sad thing, though, is that he already has a daughter with his mistress. But he went back home, took care of the three kids. 2011, they began attending church together. And he would sit right at the very back. As soon as I'm done preaching, I try to, work through the crowd to be able to reach him because I remember him from 7 years ago. And then he'd immediately go. So, sorry, that was 2010 when they began attending. 2011, I finally caught him. Sat down with him, had coffee with him, and began to do one-to-one with him. And as I would do one-to-one, I'd open up, right? I'd say a few things, and then he'd have a question. And then I'd close the one-to-one, and then I'd talk about his question. It took us 1 year to finish one-to-one. So, 1 year. But the goal with one-to-one is not to finish a lesson, but to minister to the person, right? So I ministered to him 1 year, 2011. Finally, 2012, he went through Victory Weekend. I'm so slow in my discipleship. I apologize. So 2012, he did Victory Weekend, then continued on with Purple Book, making disciples, and so on. By 2012, the two of us, started a small group together with other guys. So we began to meet 2012. It was also the time that he began to communicate again with Eva. And reconciliation began to happen. So we met with them online. Eva was in the U.S. and Mel was here in the Philippines. In the Philippines. And at that time, there was not much Zoom yet. We were doing Skype. Okay, so we Skyped together. I think we worked with them for around 6 months until middle of 2012. Eva went back home. And they began to meet with us on site. We worked through their marriage, a lot of ministry time. And then by 2013, this picture was taken September of 2012. There. They had a lunch in their house. They welcomed us, thanked us for the opportunity that we had a chance to minister to them. Before the kids, they asked for forgiveness. And then they officially said, "We're back together already, your mom and I." Not yet done. That was September of 2012. And by 2013, we started a small group with them, the family. And by the middle of 2013, I think it was, we entrusted that group to them. They began to lead that group already. The Lord used their life all the way from engage, establish, then equip, and then finally they were empowered. But as they did so, the Lord did a transforming work in their life as they followed Jesus. And then it happened that as they fellowship with believers, change continued to happen in their lives. And now they're able to reach out to other lost people as well and be able to bring them to God. The Lord is able to restore. The Lord is able to turn our lives around still. Discipleship actually works. It works. So, to review, discipleship is a call to follow Jesus, fellowship with believers, and fish for people. And a lifestyle of discipleship means that you just continually grow in your relationship. I mean, relationship, that's something we can do, right? You have a brother, you have a sister, you have a mom, you have a daughter, you have a son, you have a wife. All of us, we live in relationship. We know the rules of relationship. You know how to pursue your wife when she's angry with you. Okay? You know how to say sorry to your parents. You know how to have a best friend. So we all know how to do relationship. Now simply grow in them. Apply that to the Lord Jesus, your relationship with Him. Apply that to fellow believers. And then apply that to the lost people. And before you know it, you're living a lifestyle of discipleship. All right. I'll pause there and then I'll give this back again to Pastor Daniel. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you in this session.
All right. Yes. Any questions? Yes.
Hello. Hello, Pastor. Pastor, just a question because I think one of the challenges in discipleship is when you engage and, for example, the person that you've been trying to engage is like keep how to say rejecting you, like so, like even how many times you try to reach out, but he just keeps rejecting you, and it comes to the point that it comes like insulting you of your faith. So is there a like a limit on how to reach for this kind of people? Because sometimes, it just gets into your nerve, Yeah, but I love them, of course. I love
Quick
them.
answer to that: there is no limit. So yeah, there is no limit. But you don't need to be limited only to that person. So for example, you keep rejecting me, rejecting me, rejecting me. I'll just keep my witness and my kindness to you. When we see each other, I'd still treat you to coffee. I'll bring you to Mega Coffee, the best. Oh, yeah. 1,501 only, and yet double the size of Starbucks, right? I'd still treat you to coffee, but it does not mean that I need to only minister to you. I can go to another person. Usually, let's say you have a group of friends, you also would want to go where God is already at work. Or not to say that He's not at work in your life yet. But it could be that another person has a more open heart. Or another person, yeah. I'll keep my witness. You see my life, I'll be your friend. Yeah, you reject me, you insult me, you mock me, but I forgive you. And there's no limit to my forgiveness. Okay? But I'll also be ministering to this next person. I cannot be stopped or limited just because the person I'm ministering to is not yet responding. And then I'll just be... That's one key in life. You go where God is already working. You just let me rephrase that. You just join God where He is already working. So He's already working another person. You just join God because God has already initiated a work there. And before you know it, you see a lot of fruit. And then maybe 10 years from now, He'll be open already. But because you kept the relationship, the time comes that He needs God, He'll remember you immediately because you were the one who was ministering to Him from before. So
Yeah. Don't you love it how
but
simple,
you're okay. You're okay.
simple the answers are, but like it has a punch. It's like, oh, there's no limit. Anyone else?
Follow
Yes.
to your explanation. Okay, if I got not hurt in my mind by his rejection, then no limitation to reach to him continuously. But what if I got hurt in my mind by his rejection? But even though I know in my knowledge I need to approach him with no limitation, but every time with the rejection I got hurt, then what I need to do?
Oh, you're right. And that has happened to me too. In fact, I'm afraid of the person already. I'm afraid to even open up a a conversation about spirituality because I know he will respond in a strong way and reject me again. I don't want to get rejected, a lot. So I ask for boldness. Boldness comes from the Holy Spirit. Well, for one, I know I've been hurt, so I will have to forgive that person. And may God give me the grace to do that. And hopefully, the next time around, when I go to him, I probably won't open up the spiritual conversation unless that person opens it up or the situation asks for it. But for now, I'll just relate to him as a regular friend. We'll talk about the weather. We'll talk about politics. We'll talk about his children, but maybe not spirituality yet. In terms of the forgiveness, I have no other option. I would really have to forgive. You know why? Because we are ministers of reconciliation. It's reconciliation we bring to people. So it's difficult to not have reconciliation in your heart if our ministry is reconciliation to begin with. I pray God would give you the grace.
Amen. Wow. Powerful. Anyone else? Danny.
Thank you, Pastor, for your, yeah. Thank you. Sorry. So you talked about discipleship, right? Following Jesus. fellowshipping with the believers and fishing for people. What would you say to a member of a life group who comes to the life group only for fellowship, who comes to church only for community? What would you say to that person? And then, when do you know fellowship is over fellowshipping?
Thank you for that. Well, that's pretty much the life that Pastor Yoram has. He would preach here on a Sunday, hoping that people would catch the word and then they would live it out. But until then, he'll just keep on preaching until the people eventually respond. So I presume, Danny, that this person who attends the life group is not fruitful. He's not reaching out. He does not like the idea of fishing. He just likes the idea of fellowship. He's not even following Jesus wholeheartedly, right? So, as any life group leader would do, as Pastor Yoram does, you'll just keep on preaching the word until such time that the Lord moves that person to already respond. And he or she will actually feel it. All of us, right? We needed several doses of the word before we finally obeyed. So I'm just glad that he's attending still now. How do you know if it's already over fellowship? When we said that it's follow, fellowship, and fish. If there is no component of fish, outreach, compassion for the lost, witness for the gospel, if there's no component like that, then it just might be over fellowship. It's also over fellowship when you meet together in the life group and then you don't talk about the word. Because in the life group, the word has to be preached. So you have warm up, you have the word, then you have application, and then you have prayer. So I know of groups that meet together and it's just fellowship. There's no word, there's no application, there's no prayer. So immediately okay, that was just a party. It was a birthday gathering. It was not a life group per se. A life group has warm up, word, application, and prayer. And as long as those things are continually happening, hopefully the word will change people's lives and then it will prompt us to fish. You also know it's over fellowship when it's 3 hours already. When I say that, I mean this. When the group, the life group leader preaches for an hour, and then you do the warm-up and it takes you 30 minutes. And you do the application another 30 minutes. And then you do prayer another 30 minutes. So a total of 2.5 hours just to be able to finish the life group. The general idea is you're done with the life group in 60, 90 minutes. Probably even less in Korea. For busy people, right? So probably 60 minutes or even less. We know of a guy who is a news anchor. And he's inviting his friends to be able to do a life group. But his friends would not come. So what he did a 40-minute life group over lunch. So he just invited them over lunch together every one particular day of the week over lunch. Let's just meet from 12:10 to 12:50. So everyone would get lunch and then they'd gather together and then they just do 10, 10, 10, 10. 10 minutes warm up, 10 minutes word, 10 minutes application, 10 minutes prayer. And then by 12:50, they're done. That life group actually flourished. Because it's not over fellowship. So what we usually do is, for example, what I usually do, my small group meets from 7:30 to 9 p.m. So we'd all be there by 7:30. The first 30 minutes is a time to build relationship. We'd get to, talk together, ask questions. How are you doing? How's your work? And we just all laugh together. Then by 8 o'clock, I begin the actual material. I begin with warm-up, with word, with application, prayer. We're done by 9. Even the wives, so we're with our wives, so they usually extend when it comes to prayer time. But we make sure that everyone knows by 9, if you're busy, you need to leave already, you can go. But by 9, we're officially done. And we chose a place that closes at 9. To force us to already go home to our children, to our families there.
I may just add, sometimes we also have to be sensitive with the culture where God placed us. We have to know the people group that we are reaching out to. Because in the context of Pastor John, that's how Filipinos do it. and because we have fixed schedule. But when you are reaching out to cross-cultural people group, you have to be sensitive how they are to build relationship. Just remember that the components of every victory group meeting is present: the Word of God, prayer, and then application. So don't limit yourselves with the schedule. Just be sensitive how people are in the people group that you are reaching out to.
Wow. Thank you, Pastor John. I would like to ask, what wisdom would you give? Because I'm someone who is leading a life group with an interesting mix. So I have some people who have been, they've been Christians for quite some time now, but they're hurting. But at the same time, they're also the lost. So what compromise would you do because should I focus more on reaching out to the lost, but at the same time, there's a challenge of, reaching out to the hurting Christian. So I'm quite worried if I'm ministering to the lost, or at the same time, Christians who, they know Christian language, they know most of the cliches of, Christianity. So how would you, what wisdom would you give to that kind of situation?
That's a great question that Pastor Rodnel will answer.
Privilege. Yeah. Well, that's really a valid question, bro. Kasi when we minister naman to a group, we don't see them equally growing all at the same time. So if I may give an analogy to that, it's I don't know if you've tried yung experiment before that you're planting mango seed. You planted all of them at the same time, but over time, you'll see that this seed is still a seed. This seed has a sprout. The other one has grown already. So I think when we lead our small group, we see it that way also. I love how Pastor John said that we have to preach the word. Of course, we have to do that. But remember that discipleship is not contained or confined only in the small group. So how I will approach that is, of course, when we're doing a small group, I'll preach what I have, discerned from the Lord to preach. But after the small group, I'll meet those people you are saying hurting, not on the context of a corporate meeting, but instead, I'll meet them on a separate meeting. After the meeting, we pray. After praying, bro, let's meet later at the coffee. Oh, bro, tomorrow, are you free? So I'll still meet them and minister to them individually, just like what Jesus did. He preached to the crowd, but he gathered the disciples in a private setting also.
Yep, that's good, bro. That's good.
Just a quick one for busy people that you could only say a lot, say only one night or one particular time slot. You could actually have two people that you could meet with already. So 30 minutes before the start of your life group and 30 minutes after, and then it's all in one go. So at least for those who are quite busy. So yeah, and I like how Pastor Rodnel put it. So discipleship does not only happen in the meeting. In fact, we said this, right? The life group meeting, that just lasts for 1.5 hours. But discipleship, that's 24/7. So, yeah. All right. Pastor Yoram, you were raising your hand. And then afterwards, Patrick.
Thank you. So many Filipino members ask, so as a Korean, I think it's when we have life group meeting, I'm still student, you're same age, but we are not as singer, and some person, some person already. Thank you. So already married, and they have their children. So each person have different background, current situation. So honestly speaking, it's not easy to share all our lives each other, because I understood that they are the leader of their family member, take care of their children. So I'm single, so it's kind of a limitation. And the second, it's a personal question, but you are the pastor and you have at least 20 ministry as a pastor. Then what is the most difficult? Because I was in Japan two years, but I'm not a pastor. Then as a student visa, I support our local Korean church. But I lived there actually almost 1 year in the church. So I knew the enter the financial difficulties, all the difficulties. That's why I decided to. I work in Korea. I made my money, so I want to help them. So I know there are so much difficulties. We looks outside looks very good, but especially in Japan, not many members actually in Christian. It's very hard to make discipleship. I mean the quantity. So anyhow, I have two questions. I think you understand what I mean.
The first one you said, how can I, as a single person, minister to, say, couples or married couples or people or parents? Is that right? That was your first question?
And also some limitation. Only after finish the worship service, we have a small group. But in our members, when I feel something like that, some limitation, we need to know each other more. But they already married and have children.
So they need to go already.
I mean, no. It's kind of burden to them. My personal something that we are different care of lifestyle.
Yeah, you're right.
Different lifestyle.
Like member, but out of him, every members are all already married couple. I think he's the only one who is single.
Yes. Are you the one leading that group or your member? All right. Okay. That would be all right. So well, you're right. Different lifestyle, and you're right. Maybe it's either get to meet them in other settings aside from the church, or you could also be part of a group that's with singles. There. So just so you're of the same demographic there. But the one with Pastor Bruce, that's the that'd be great. Thank you. Your second question was something about Japan church or difficult? Come.
Sometimes very difficult. I knew very well. So
The financial difficulties of a missionary. Oh, Miss Mariela, so much to say about that.
The only secret is prayer. And it works, right?
Well, you're right. The idea, how do you overcome? You just keep on going. I guess whether there's food in your stomach, there's nothing to pay rent with, your kid is in the hospital, and you'll just have to continue in the call. I mean, most or many, I'm sorry. Many of our pastors and ministers, they just do exactly that. They just keep on doing it, and the Lord blesses them at some point.
Yeah. No, just to clarify what I said earlier. Yeah, prayer, but of course, when you respond to the mission of God, He's faithful, provision follows. Yeah. We have needs, but we have seen the hands of God provide for all the needs that we have.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, when I see our church life group, so most group is like a balance and then looks working. But what I'm talking about that, some group has like a different. I don't want to say. Okay, all leaders. Okay, why don't you mute your all leaders? Some group has like a different level to understanding Bible. So some group, half of them, they couldn't get any sermon or any point. Then some group, they understand well, and then they have so many insight, and then they want to share more. But that half group, half members, it's kind of it's like hard to bonding. But we keep trying to encourage them to. Anyway, 1 year later, looks same. almost 2 years later, look same, not really develop the others. They not really following some kind of encouragement anyway. Still same level. How can it? We keep trying to discipleship, other material, not only life group. But anyway, that's a kind of something question. How can you do it? So I'm really thinking, can I divide different group maybe? Something like that. We have so many concern about that.
I missed the question, so sorry.
Sorry, there's two different groups. Those who, not only not men and women, not only age, not only single and married, kind of couldn't understand well, like a non-believer, or even though they couldn't understand well, even though you share maybe anything. Do you want to share? No. Anything? Do you want to have a prayer request? No. So half of them, and then some group want to share more, but somehow because of them they reduce their say something, or they only take care of them 1 year, 2 year, many years. Not really develop these people. Also, not really develop. So that's why two different style, one group, long. How can better way?
How to do it.
Just keep encourage them, because some are on live, so we keep use the mic.
Yeah, are they all the same community though? Are they people who do life together outside the group as well, or is separate?
Church, in the church.
They're in the church, yes. I remember we had in one of my small groups, so a guy who was not a Christian started coming because he's friends. He worked together with some of the guys in the small group, and they own a company together, and they do life together. So he started coming to the small group. And then after a while, he realized, I don't feel like I belong here because the talk is so different. So what I did with him, I said, it's okay, let's just meet. So he wanted to stop coming to the group. I said, it's okay, I'll meet with you separate. And then as I shared with him, he began to realize, oh, actually God is in my life. And I do hear God, I just didn't know that was God in my life. And so I took time to build a foundation in his life, and then he came to the point where it's like, okay, I'm ready to come back into the group to understand. So I think you might have to choose one group, one level of ministry or the other for that group, either the ones who are older, and to say, hey, look, you need to reach out. Let's grow the younger ones and help them mature in God first. And they might have to do that outside the group, or you might focus a lot of, like a little baby. A little baby needs a lot of individual attention, right? Whenever you have a new child. So if some of them in the group are just young in the Lord, they might need more individual attention. So you might have to get the older ones to give them time individually to help them mature, so that the fellowship within the group is either geared for the younger ones or geared for the older ones. Does that make sense? I think it's hard sometimes to do both in the group meeting. But then again, the group meeting is only 40 minutes out of the week. So all the rest of the time you can either focus on helping the older ones mature or helping the younger ones grow. Does that make sense? No? maybe we need someone else with more wisdom. Yeah.
I just want to share what we're normally doing. We have a regular leaders huddle where we discuss the pressing need, or if there are things that we need to adjust in our victory group, or be a victory group. So we discuss in the leaders huddle. So in other words, if we see that some of the victory groups are not really growing, So we talk about it. What do we need to do to make adjustments? So I think, having a kind of leaders huddle consistently, like because we're doing it once a month. So where we talk about what's happening with the victory group. So we assess basically, and we talk about it. Then, if there are again pressing needs, we discuss to the entire leadership. I don't know if that is the.
My last input on that, and that might be applicable to some of us, would be the parable of the sower. Some people respond to it immediately, but there's not much fruit. Others are crowded out by the weeds, the concerns of this world, Others are really bearing a lot of fruit. So when Pastor Yoram was actually saying, maybe I should divide the group or something like that, yeah, that might actually be an option. Or say, get the fruitful ones and then give them the next level of training as leaders. That's also an option. And then continue to work with the rest of them, the rest of those who might be remaining that I need to give more attention to. Or, and this we know, those people who don't grow, when they're given responsibility, they're forced to grow. So you give them responsibility. I'm going to ask you to care for this person who's new here in church. You take care of them. You bring them, they're just transitioning here to Seoul. Please help establish them and take care of them. And then, so when they're given responsibility, even those people who used to be not growing, when they're given responsibility, they are forced to grow. They're forced to have compassion. They're forced to serve. They're forced to do that. And in many ways, that helps them. That helped me. The first time I got to church, they gave me a broom to be able to sweep the church with, to help with the ushers. And that helped me because immediately I found a place to serve. I found the people that I could be with regularly, and that grew me. I had a responsibility, even though it was only with a broom, I had a responsibility, and that, that grew me along the way. All right, I'll give this back now to Pastor Daniel. We might.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Questions? These are good questions, really good questions. And the answers are really good too. If not, we'll finish.
What?
Okay.
We have one more session, so let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
And then afterwards, by 5:15, Pastor Bruce will come and teach in relation to ministering to a certain group of people in our life groups.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really important anxiety or something depression, right? Yeah, you look no more depression because of your wife. Yeah? So please give me your something insight. So we want the impartation, okay?